Yeah, goodness.
Yeah! This is so much fun! What now?
It has been 2 fortnights.
Oh, scheisse.
I've been waiting to feast.
Let me go check the comments on the announcement video.
At least somebody liked the new intro.
Yeah, goodness.
Okay, let me just go call Deltax.
Oh yeah, hey, it's Deltax. Yeah, I've been pretty busy lately, so yeah, you're on your own, buddy. Okay, bye.
Okay. The crap, it's not even plugged in!
Namusta zobdy. Still.
Wait, I know who can help. The internet! Whee!
I've created this account for fun, no-sleep stories, but I've decided to start with something true and genuine. This happened 1 to 2 months ago. This happened 1 to 2 months back, but something occurred tonight, which reminded me of the story. Apologies for the length. My girlfriend and I are in our early 20s. She lives with her parents on a rather large property outside of town, covered in forest. Right off the main road is a long, winding path that leads to her house. The path sides and property itself have an abundance of trees, flowers, and wildlife. Further past the house is a small field which the path continues across. At the end of the path sits a small little barn, marking the ending of the field and the beginning of the forest. The forest has various trails all throughout. It goes on quite a long ways if you continue north. There are farms on both the west and east side if you walk long enough. The west side farm is on the property. It has a nice field they rent out to a local farmer, and an old abandoned house in the far corner. Now that we have the property mapped out a bit, let's go back 1 to 2 months in time. Their entire family was leaving for vacation and asked me to house sit. Take care of their dog, feed their fish, water their infinite plants and endless garden. It came time to walk the dog. The sun was setting, and I wanted to leave before it got dark. The dog hates the forest. She refuses to enter it. My girlfriend and her family have accepted this and don't often bring her near it. I, on the other hand, wanted to check it out, so I bribed her with treats. We left the house, crossed the field, and reached the edge of the forest. The forest was darker than expected. The trees are thick and don't let in much light. The dog refused to go further, but after a little bribery, she followed while glued to my side. I'm guessing the coyotes have marked the forest as their territory, and she picks up on the scent. Nothing too alarming. A few yards into the forest sits a small chicken coop on the left side of the... A few yards into the forest sits a small chicken coop on the left-hand side of the trail. It's a medium-sized shed that looks a little rugged. All windows are boarded up, and it's covered in wired fence and moss. I've entered it once before, and it fits 1 or 2 dozen chickens. I had stopped at this chicken coop because the dog refused to go further once again. This time, it started growling. I too felt a little strange. We haven't been in the forest for long, but the entire time I'd had a strange feeling. I heard something loud in the trees, snapping the branches. It was far too large to be a squirrel, rabbit, raccoon, or even coyote. Could have been a bear, but I don't believe we have them in the area. It's a possibility, though. The sound seemed to be coming from all around. It was hard to pinpoint a specific direction. I stood in silence, focusing on the sound, while gazing into the dark forest surrounding me. Suddenly, the chickens in the coop started to panic. Small feet started to pitter-patter across the floor, while others seemed to scratch at the walls, bang on the door, and make strange sounds I can't replicate. It sounded as if a dozen chickens had their voice boxes removed and were forced to fight to the death with one another. I decided it was time to leave when both the chickens and the dog were spooked. A few days later, my girlfriend and her family end their vacation and arrive home. It was early afternoon, and I still wanted to check out the forest, so we decided to go on a walk. When we reached the chicken barn, I had mentioned what happened. I thought it was a funny story and told it lightly. She seemed a little concerned and thought I was kidding. After a little confusion on both ends, she opened up the coop's door. "There's no chickens in here. We haven't had chickens in almost a year." I don't know who was in that chicken coop that night, but let's not meet. If enough people are interested, I'll edit in what happened to my girlfriend tonight. It's related and what reminded me to post this. Edit. Alright, here's what happened. Now last night, which reminded me of the story. My girlfriend was over at my house for the majority of the day. She ended up leaving around 11:30 p.m. Entrance to their house is a little strange since they rent out their basement suite. The front door uses a different key than their back door, so rather than knocking and waking everyone up, she uses her back door key. In order to get to the back door, she has to walk around the house, of course, cutting through her yard, which is surrounded by thick bushes on all sides. This is the exact text she sent me after she got home. When I opened the gate, I heard this creepy, demented, animal-like scream from the bush by the trampoline. I walked a bit closer and it was like weird, gurgling, growling sounds, but I couldn't see anything clearly in the dark. I was like, okay, not going this way, and went in the front door instead. What is out there? And went in the front door instead. What is out there? We then started talking about the various strange events that occur at her house. Most aren't appropriate for this sub as they're more supernatural, although I don't believe in that stuff myself. I'd be willing to post some of the stories in a more appropriate sub if anyone knows of one.
For starters, I'm the oldest of a family of 6. 2 younger sisters and a baby brother. Also, this takes place in Germany on the road home. My family and I just came back from a hiking, relaxing trip. The first few hours of coming home was the usual "I'm hungry" or "I have to go potty," and me as usual listening to music. After a few hours of constant complaining, it toned down since it was late and around 8:30 p.m. The road had very little cars, and the ones that were on were a distance away. We were all doing our own thing when a small black car sped up behind us. The car turned to the next lane and sped in front of us and cutting us off, making us slam on the brakes, barely missing them. My father was already angry since they almost made him hit them, and my mom was having a panic attack. As I tried calming her down, with a way I memorized, I noticed that the car was beside us. My mom had calmed down and saw the same thing. The passenger window was down and I saw the driver pass him something. At first I figured it was a cigarette or something. I know it's a big difference with my eyes were still adjusting from seeing the light of my phone. Once my eyes adjusted, I saw the man stick his right hand out of the window with something that looked like a gun. At me! My mom screamed for my father to step on the gas to book it out of there. He did. Once we got home, my mom went straight to bed and decided that we would unpack the next day. I, however, was too shocked to even sit still, so I started unpacking my suitcase. Once I was done, I still couldn't sleep, constantly keeping my flashlight near me. I had one because of constant night terrors and me not trusting anything but that flashlight during the night, and grabbed a knife out of the drawer and slept with it on top of my books on my headboard. This happened about a month ago, and I get nightmares about it, and I constantly check my surroundings. Whenever I look back at it, I get angry. Not because they could have killed me, but because they could have killed my younger sisters and brother. I can't stand to think what could have happened. So to the men with the guns in the black car, let's not meet, for both your sake and mine.
It was a hot night during the summer of 2015. Being the heavy pot smoker I was during the summer with my friends, I was smoking almost every night, and I couldn't exactly tell you whether or not I was high either during or before when this incident occurred, but I can almost assure I wasn't. Just thought I would add that in for some credibility. Whatever though, back to the story. It was a regular summer night. My time estimation is that it occurred somewhere between 1 and 4 in the morning. I was in my bed and I was asleep, or at least I think I was asleep. Let me explain. I'm not sure if anyone can relate to this experience, but the only way I can seem to explain it is my mind was conscious and my body was fully asleep. What I mean by this is my mind was active. I was aware of my surroundings in my room, but I couldn't move in the slightest. At the time, my room was in the upstairs attic. Now that I think of this, being that it was the attic, this might have some relevance to what happened. Only God knows what could have happened there through the years. I have no idea. The only real reason I was up there to begin with was because I wanted a little more privacy, and the room was completely isolated from the rest of my house. My actual room was smack right next to my parents', and it was very hard to have privacy in there, especially at night, being that there was not even a working door and I had to be very quiet and such when my parents were asleep. This really annoyed me. I wanted to be able to blast music, watch porn with audio or any videos, FaceTime my girlfriend, and just a lot of shit I couldn't do while being in a room next to my parents, nonetheless my sleeping parents, and usually being pretty high. My sister being away at college allowed me to take the attic bedroom, so I took that opportunity almost instantly. God, now I really wish I didn't. Also, I thought I should mention, while FaceTiming my girlfriend, which was almost a nightly thing, we'd always kid and joke about ghost stories and demons and stuff like that. Me usually being the one saying, "There's a demon in my room," and other stuff like that, followed by a silly, ghostly demon voice impression. It was all fun and games then, but little did I know, maybe there was some slivers of truth behind it. Back to the story. As I was saying before, I was lying in my bed conscious. However, I could not move my body at all, even though I tried to every effort. In other words, I guess you could say I was paralyzed. I was awake mentally, but my body was still asleep, and I realized this too while it was happening. It was very uncomfortable and uneasy feeling to experience. So as this was happening, I continued to try and move. I felt a sudden, very strange feeling. Just thinking about it gives me chills. The only way I could think of to put it is that there was a feeling of very intense pressure. And when I say intense, I mean intense. Like it flooded my whole body and my whole surrounding. Since my mind was active and I was experiencing this all firsthand, I immediately reacted to this pressure. It was a very uneasy feeling, and at least I could say it was uncomfortable and absolutely terrifying. In other words, it was just like pure darkness, or what I like to call it, pure evil. Just being able to move my eyes, since at the moment I still didn't have access to my body. I just saw intense darkness throughout the room. The feeling I was experiencing kept getting more intense and intense by the second. All I kept thinking in my head was, "God help me. God help me. Why can't I wake up? What the fuck is going on?" The evil intensified even more, and I began to feel a lot of heat surge throughout my body. The feeling I was experiencing at that point was not only the most intense pressure I've ever felt, but mentally, it was truly the most terrifying thing I'd ever experienced. Then all of a sudden, I seemed to just gain access to my arms out of nowhere, and my immediate reaction was I clenched the crucifix I was wearing around my neck with all my strength, and I was praying to God in my head, begging for it all to stop. Now at this point, I came to the full conclusion something very dark and evil was not only very present and responsible for this event, but I believe I was trying to be possessed or something like that. Honestly, I have no idea. I remember saying something in my head like, "Bring it on, motherfucker," or something like that. as if I was speaking directly to whatever it was, and still clenching my cross and not letting it up one bit. I then began to feel pressure subside, and in a sense, the dark entity just leaving my body or surrounding, or whatever the fuck it was doing. All I know is, shortly after this, it was gone. And it was just like a snap of a finger. Everything was fine again. I got a sudden feeling of, I guess the only way to put it would be the sudden feeling of peace, like it was finally over. Then it was like another snap and I was fully conscious, laying upright upside my bed, and I was clenching my cross like I was during my dream, or whatever the fuck it was. I looked around the room and everything seemed normal and fine. I was sweating and all I had was an absolute imprint of remembrance to what I just had experienced. At that point is when I finally let go of my cross. After another few seconds of trying to put everything together, I just let out a big, "What the fuck just happened?" I didn't really know what to say or think. I shrugged it off and eventually I was able to fall back asleep. However, the next morning and the next 2 weeks, I was left in a very uncomfortable state, remembering what had happened that night. To this day, I still can't exactly tell you what I've been through, but I'm just really glad I had my cross on. I'm confident in saying God was looking out for me against whatever the fuck that was that night. Please don't forget there is an evil in this world.
Okay, you happy now? Is your undead stomach finally quenched?
Indeed. Wait, it was too much. Now move slowly. Get to the chopper.
I'll be back next year, mukes. I'll be back.